change of scenery, different sounds. It's nice going somewhere where the sounds are unfamiliar, the sounds of conversation. I mean, granted, I speak Spanish, but it's different. I mean, I understand it, but not well enough that I can like catch conversation. Not necessarily that I eavesdrop, but just in passing. Obviously, like, you know, back home, you can catch on to conversations randomly here or there. But like, it's kind of nice where I just kind of watch people and see them talk, and it's just like not gibberish. That's a negative connotation, but it's just noise, like a white noise, which is nice. I love this kind of architecture. I also love that this building is in the colors of Argentina. I mean, obviously, because it's like La Escuela Argentino. Something to keep in mind when you're in these cities here, and I'm sure if you've traveled in this part of the world, you know it, but for those who haven't, you want to be really careful when you're walking down the street, not so much because of crime and stuff, because I'm not so much worried about that, but here's what you really should be worried about. The sidewalks and the gutters. You can't really tell, I don't think, but like, it's a pretty quick drop off. So if you're not paying attention, you think you're gonna go from the sidewalk onto the asphalt and it's gonna be all level, but that's not the case. And I've actually seen a couple people in San Jose. I saw one yesterday where there was a guy who actually was like on his back at a corner. It looks like he'd like fallen into the gutter by accident or something like that. So yes, that's something, your little travel tip from Aaron for whatever it's worth. Try some espresso in the park here. So I took my first COVID test this morning, because you have to do so in order to return to the U.S. Although, had I done this trip a few days later, as I understand it, you can re-enter the U.S. with proof of vaccination, which I have. But in the meantime, you got to get a antigen test, something like that. So, interesting experience. 2 swabs, one in the back of the throat, which isn't so bad, but the one up your nose, woo, up both nostrils, it feels like they're, I mean, I've seen people on podcasts and other shows describing taking the COVID test, and I really thought they were exaggerating when they said, oh, it feels like they're poking your brain. It does feel like they're poking your brain. But thanks to science, because I don't know, I love science. The universe is based on it. And yeah, I digress. Got the results back in an hour, más o menos. And it came back negative. So, yeah, so I can fly back to the U.S. Knowing that I won't be bringing back COVID. I will say, I think I mentioned it before, but that ceviche I had earlier in the mercado here, the best meal I've had in Costa Rica. And I'm gonna think about it, but I may go so far as say it may be the best meal I've had in all the times I've been to Costa Rica. This is like the third time now I've been, and this, I tell you, that that ceviche was legit, and they had that light colored salsa. And when I talked to the gentleman who runs the place, he told me that they were Panamanian chilies, and then that light went up in my head because my wife Jude and I went to Panama a few years ago and went to their famous fish market that was made famous, at least for Americans, by Saint Anthony of the Bourdain, and that was probably some of the best ceviche I've ever had in my life. But what made it so unique is that, and I told the guy at the stall here that it was very interesting because being from California and Mexico, and how Mexican and California food, it's this mix. Most of our salsa in our part of the world is going to be either like the green tomatillo sauce or like the chile ancho, the more dark, the red chilies or greens. But this one was like an orange color. I think I captured some images of it, and I totally spaced on the Panamanian thing until you mentioned it, and then I remembered that they had that type of hot sauce in Panama, and I forget the chili they use. I wrote it down some time ago, and I'll have to go back and look at it, but it's man, it was good. So yeah, I got no plan. I'm gonna walk around and see what kind of other nonsense I can find around here. When I was reading about Heredia and deciding to come here, they said it was a city of gardens and parks, and they were right. This is beautiful. And what's nice about coming into this park, or these parks, is that it's less humid. Random observation. So, obviously, when you travel to places like this, there's more poverty. And there are a lot of people who ask for money. I will say this. The panhandlers, for lack of a better term, seem to be less aggressive here than, say, like, a big city in the U.S. I mean, hell, downtown Sacramento or San Francisco, And you have people who are aggressively panhandling and bugging you and following you down the street. Here I've noticed something different. Those who have approached me, at least, like approached me, like I swear to God, every single person that has come up to me and asked for money has like, they approach me very slowly, and it's all of them have been like, I mean, humble, I suppose, because I mean it does take obviously a lot of humility to ask for money on the street, but something that occurred to me that a few people have pointed out is well, let me turn the camera around. It may be all this stuff. And no, this is not a gratuitous way to show I've got tattoos. But what has occurred to me and what some people have pointed out, and it might be true, it might not, but regardless, it seems to keep me out of trouble, is I think when they see people with tattoos here, there's a bit of weariness. And I only say that because traveling in Panama before with my wife has all tattoos. She's got more tattoos than I do. And we went to this cafe in the old town of Panama. I think it's called the Casco Viejo. Anyways, this old black guy was sitting in the cafe, and he kind of hollered out to us in the cafe. He actually reminded me of like some old blues guys I used to play with. He said, "Hey man, where you from?" Literally, I mean with a bit of an accent, but I told him that we were from California. He thought we were from Mexico, as most people do, only because I've got some Dia de los Muertos type tattoos on my arms, so they assume that we're Mexican. I mean, they're half right, but the one thing that the gentleman told us was that in Panama and Central America, people with tattoos are either criminals or tourists. I hadn't put that together, but then it occurred to me later on. This is back in Panama City. Later that day, my wife and I were in the metro, and it was weird because we suddenly became like conscious of we noticed the fact that people were actually kind of looking at us and like as if like we were freaks, which I told at the time, it's like, look, I'd rather that people be, I don't know if scares or, but you know, if people see us as not approachable, because well, the best way to win conflict is to avoid it altogether, which I think the tattoos do. But getting back to here, I think it might be that that tattoos put people off, which is good. And I actually have noticed a couple of times where I've been walking down the street and it appeared as though somebody was going to come up and talk to me, but they didn't. Or like people getting out of the way, which is fine with me. But yeah, it is what it is. And hell, if I can give 1,000 colones at a time to people, it's the price of living. So it's an interesting observation. Wonder if anybody else has had experiences with that. But like I told people, and I mean, it's a common travel thing, but I mean, again, just if you put out a vibe that you're not to be fucked with, I think they generally will not fuck with you. So random observation.